Hello, my dear Sunil R Nair. Here, basically, we are discussing about the one topic that is the nuclear plant, basically. Nuclear plant and the power company, basically. That's basically connects to the union, basically. This basically directly connects to the union, basically. So, in this, basically, we were discussing about the one dangerous topic that is basically one city, basically, I have taken as an example. For example, one city is getting the power supply. That means he is basically getting the power supply from the set of power companies and connected nuclear power companies. That basically is the common thing, right? Now here the main thing is each and every city basically has got some target. That target basically says that basically you have to basically uh, create these human needs. So for that basically when the city was created, that time basically it was decided that it was planned that this area is going to this area is going to create this human needs, this area is going to create that human needs, that area is going to create this human needs, like this basically assume that there are some certain level of areas basically which is declared basically. So like this basically this area basically was created created by hundreds of countries basically, right? So when the hundreds of country basically say that basically we have created it, so 100% they are only going to pass the power supply because they have created, na? Because they have created, it's their responsibility. So they will be going to pass the power supply. So that power supply basically is going to pass from the nuclear company basically. So chain will be like this: nuclear companies, major power companies of each and every countries, they passes the power companies to each and every cities power companies. So like there might be some other chain also basically. Here basically I just taken this much chain. So like this basically each and everything basically are settled, right? This is the one thing basically. So here the main thing is basically each and every city will assume that 1,75,000 is the city. So 1,75,000 city basically is getting the each and every power supply data from the nuclear power company directly, and they are basically connected with satellites. They are basically connected with the satellite. So this basically is one chain of the one satellite also basically you can say. One chain also you can say. If the one person told that basically without satellite it will not work because city is already there. Basically city has already created. So this will not. Then he told that basically the cities basically has is doing the set of process also basically. City basically keeps doing process also basically. So and the power company says that the particular days power basically each and every country, each and every city basically gets in advance. So that basically is the main thing. So directly basically each and every power company basically are connected with the satellites, and the mostly basically nuclear power companies only basically connects to the satellite because power company can't take that much of data basically which are basically passed by the satellites group basically. So like this basically this all are the chain basically which is created by set of groups basically, and they basically says that if you want to create this all human needs, this data only you have to pass. Otherwise basically the human needs which you want to create that will not get created basically. For that basically one city basically is created like this basically many city 1,75,000 cities created. According to that basically each and every population basically has set it. Each and every population are also basically set it. If they don't adjust then basically they get adjust according to the data basically which they passes inside the body. So like this basically they keeps on adjusting basically. So like this each and every basically cities basically are created according to the human needs basically which are basically going to generate from the set of cities according to the nuclear power company algorithm which is basically passed by the set of satellites and basically the nuclear power company. So nuclear power company basically keeps on passing the data. Satellite company basically passes the latest data basically for that particular city basically, and nuclear power company basically do the filtration And then this is was basically not like that. Basically, if a satellite company passed the data that day, and that minute only, basically the nuclear power company passes the power data to power company, and power company basically passes to data to city. It doesn't happen on just within a minute or basically 2 to 3 minutes. It takes basically a day. Basically, it takes a day basically to do the lots of filtration, lots of power, lots of basically process happens. Then only basically the data gets changed, because each and every city basically are controlled by set of power companies, basically set of power companies, and the nuclear power companies are controlled by the satellites group, basically. So that is the basically main thing, basically. So this is also basically one of the union, basically, and this is, I think, very dangerous union, because each and every earthquake related data basically are also basically controlled by the nuclear power company only. Each and every nuclear power company controls the each and every city's balancing unbalancing data also. So like these are things are also basically there. So each and every balancing imbalancing data basically that are also basically controlled by the each and every nuclear power company. For example, one nuclear power company controls around 150 or 170 countries. Then basically that 170 countries, basically if earthquake basically is happening, small or big earthquake, then basically these nuclear power companies are the data basically which they are passing, that data something is conflict by the um, power company, basically. So there are basically 170 to 180 power companies, basically mostly, basically minimum, basically I'm telling, because for 170 to 80 countries are there, they are getting the data from the nuclear power company. They basically minimum, basically one power company at least basically have in the country, right? Minimum one taking. So like this, basically the data basically connects to here, and then basically it passes to the environment, and then that environment basically sometime gets conflict or also, basically, but mostly never gets conflict, because data are basically perfectly accurate, basically passed by the nuclear power company. So like this, basically the union, basically this is also basically the union, basically which is basically created by the set of group, basically. For example, if you want to create the vegetable in this city, basically, then the nuclear power company basically is 100% going to pass this type of data only. If you want to pass any fruits related data, then basically this nuclear power company only is going to pass. So like this, basically each and every data basically are calculated. Each and every data basically are calculated, basically according to the calculation only the data basically are passed and given back. And city basically gives data back also, basically, because for example certain level of process basically has happened. So that error, for example, one person basically is doing some task, so his manager 100% is going to check the task, right? Without basically checking, basically he is not going to pass the work to the customers, basically, right? He also checks the data, then only basically he pass the work, basically which is done by the set of groups of the his team, basically. Then basically the task is passed to the customer. So same way, basically the nuclear power company also, it's like that only, basically. Each and every the city basically do the process. For example, nuclear power company passed the data to each and every cities. They basically are connected with set of power companies. They basically passes the data, and like this, basically each and every data are processed, and then basically lots of things basically happens, and then basically checking happens, and like this, basically there are lots of mechanism basically which is created. It can be very any mechanism, basically we can't say, basically it can be in environment also. It might possible that a set of human clones might be created, that if this energy basically we have created, that energy is correctly created or not. For that, basically it might possible that a few human clone groups also might be created to check that particular data, and they basically pass a special basically data to that particular human clones, and then basically human clones basically are basically checked by the set of groups, basically that are the energy groups, and they basically says that basically, yeah, basically this data is processing perfectly, you can basically go ahead. And then basically the nuclear power company basically say that basically, yeah, process is perfectly going, we can take the data back. So like this, basically each and every company, basically each and every city basically have set of human clones basically created according to their requirement which is given by the nuclear power company, that because nuclear power company only basically checks, because they only know the what are the things basically going to generate, and currently basically what data is getting generated. So like this basically the data are basically processed in the city, data are processed and then basically passed to the human clones, and then basically human clone basically checks the data, that data basically are checked by the set of groups, and then basically the data is basically passed to the nuclear power company basically. So like this basically the new one entire basically you can say it's a union basically, union of you can say like the fruits, vegetables, or basically oils, or basically petrols. Like this basically each and every human needs which is basically already created by the set of groups basically who are basically expert into the city creation basically. And city basically they say that basically we can convert the city equal to human souls, sorry, human creation basically, human needs basically. So we can create the human needs basically from the city basically. In that basically lots of people says that we are expert. So like this basically the expert means basically there are set of without basically plan and without design basically nothing is going to happen. So a set of groups are basically there who do the set of level of plans, and then only basically the city creation. But it's not like that. The basically create this here, this create this much building here, create that much building there, create that much building there. That basically that type of work basically you can't do basically, because the area basically which is getting created, that basically requires some power supply also. No? So that power supply basically from where basically from which country basically you have to take the data, that each and everything basically you have to set right. Otherwise blindly basically you can't do the things basically, right? So the certain plans basically are designed, and this area basically is going to create from these countries, these countries, like this is and every basically areas are defined, and according to that basically country basically passes the data. So this basically is entire one basically union process basically, on the base of the entire human needs basically are being changed. So this is also basically one of the union basically you can say. So like this is also basically one of the area. Then basically one person told that basically uh, currencies data basically are also basically there, right? For example, one person is doing the investment in the any of the country basically. So he basically says that basically I have done the investment. So the currency department basically prints literally the money basically, and they convert the currencies basically of the particular whatever currency into local country basically. For example, Indian businessman basically doing investment in another country, other countries doing business in India. Like this, basically the currency basically are basically literally printed. Why? Because they have to print the currency, na? Because they are going to spend money in that particular country, because investment is done in that particular country. So they literally print the money, because they can't spend the other countries' data basically, right? So they have to print the money. Then basically they have to allocate that particular money into that particular businessman. Basically, that he businessman is allocated has invested this money. Like this, basically that literally keeps the investment data, and then basically the currency is printed, currency are allocated to the particular businessman. Businessman says that basically we have invested this much. Like this basically do the investment. Like this basically the government do the investment, and government says that basically we have done the investment, and like this the money basically is already invested basically. The money is basically already invested, and the money basically is already invested. You can basically do one thing. You can basically start the investment process. Like this basically the currency gets print, and then the investment basically gets start basically. They basically start the investment, and they basically start the work, and the money basically keeps on doing the expense side basically. So like this the money basically gets on print, and as per the money requirement of the work basically the money gets spent basically. Like this basically this is also basically one of the chain basically, because that currency basically is connected with this currency is connected with the particular task, and the particular task basically is will be connected to particular energies, and that energy basically will be connected to particular nuclear power power company and the nuclear power company. And that if we see the chain basically, then the each and every currencies basically are also basically connected with the nuclear power company. So each and every currency basically which are getting printed, that basically are printed and mapped with this particular energy companies and the power companies. Like this basically this is also basically like this also basically things are basically connected. So it's not like that basically everything without plan basically the things basically happen. One person basically told that create one city basically. So without planning basically it does basically create building here, create 10 building here, create 100 building here, create this many building here. Like this basically you can't do. You before that basically the lots of groups are there basically, lots of big universities are basically there who basically know each and everything basically the creation of city basically they know. They basically know how basically the human needs are basically created on the base of certain city creation basically. They know basically how basically our cities are created on the base of certain data basically, and that data basically are given on the base of the certain human needs basically, which is going to be created on the base of that particular city design. The city basically is designed on the base of certain human needs, which is going to create from that city basically, from that basically the cities and the entire people's energy basically. So according to that basically each and every things basically are designed, and then only basically its creation basically happens. Without basically plan basically does not, nothing basically happens. Because if we do the certain level of plans basically the, if you say that basically create this much building here, create this much building, and if you don't track the basically where from the material basically has got, from where the basically things basically have got, and which company basically is handling this, which software company is handling the digital way basically. For example, one city is created, so how basically the, you will not be basically that particular, assume that that particular area is generating some fruits or vegetables or some oil basically from energy basically. So he will not go and basically say that basically give me some oil basically. That basically is not possible basically. The digital basically, the digital world basically which is created, that basically is created for this specifically purpose only basically. That is, the area gets created digitally, it is mapped, that is basically the through energy basically it is mapped, and then basically digitally the each and every power companies gets the data, supplies the data, change the data, then basically process the data, and then basically it is passed to the final data is basically passed to the nuclear power company. Why? Because it might possible that few data basically might be messed by the power company, and it is not possible that the nuclear power company will say that basically this data is missing, so this give me this, that type of thing basically is not possible. Because if you are giving that data to the nuclear power company, that should be perfect data basically. Then only basically you can pass the data to the nuclear power company. Then basically that's why basically each and every power company checks the data, then only basically they passes the data basically which is supposed to be processed by the nuclear power company. So like this basically they say that basically each and every data basically are processed, and each and every data basically are changed. So how many types of data basically are there? How basically each and every data are changed, how basically the nuclear power company are connected with the power company, and how basically the data are going to be processed in the city, and how basically the digital world basically has created, that basically we are going to see in next video basically.